I forgot my phone at the restaurant after dinner with my son. When I returned, the server locked the door and whispered, "Stay quiet. I'm going to show you the footage from the camera above your table, but promise me you won't faint." What my son did in that video brought me to my knees. For 6 months, my son had been poisoning me, laughing as I lost my senses, planning to steal a $120 million legacy. He thought I was dying. He had no idea this was just the beginning. What I did in those 5 days changed everything. But first, where in the world are you hearing this story? Comment your location below. I forgot my phone at the restaurant. When I returned to the French Laundry 20 minutes later, the server met me at the door. Hannah Brooks, her name tag read. But instead of handing me my phone, she locked the door behind me. "Mr. Beaumont," she whispered, "you need to see something." Her hands shook as she led me past the empty dining room into a cramped storage room. My phone sat beside a security monitor, forgotten. Hannah pulled up footage from earlier that evening, her fingers trembling on the keyboard. "I could lose my job for this," she said, "but I can't stay quiet." The screen showed table 12. My table. The dinner that had ended an hour ago. Let me back up. Earlier that evening, I'd been struggling to taste a $200 Cabernet. The wine was supposed to be Magnificent Holland Estate, 96 points. But to me, it was just liquid. The complex notes I should have tasted were ghosts. "Dad, you look awful." Benjamin leaned forward, concern etched across his face. My son, 37 years old, vice president of sales at Beaumont Estate Winery. "These dizzy spells are getting worse." Beside him, Francesca nodded. "My daughter-in-law draped in emerald silk and too much gold. The doctor said it's adulated degeneration. Theodore, you need to step back before something serious happens." The room swayed when I turned my head. I'd been losing my sense of smell for months. Taste followed. The dizziness came in waves, unpredictable and terrifying. At 68, maybe they were right. Maybe my body was giving out. "The power of attorney papers," Benjamin said gently. "Sign them next week. Let me handle the day-to-day operations. You can finally rest." 40 years I'd built that winery. 3 generations of Beaumont blood in that soil. But I couldn't taste my own wines anymore. I'd fainted twice in the past month. "Fine," I said. "I'll sign next week." The relief on Benjamin's face should have comforted me. Instead, something cold settled in my chest. We finished dinner. I left my phone on the table and didn't realize it until I was halfway home. I turned back, expecting nothing more than a quick retrieval. Hannah Brooks gave me the truth instead. On the monitor, I watched the dinner replay. I watched myself stand and walk toward the restroom. The moment my back turned, Benjamin moved. Quick and practiced. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a small vial clear liquid. He uncapped it with his thumb and poured it into my wine glass. The glass I drank from when I returned. Francesca saw. She didn't stop him. She turned her body, shielding him from view, and smiled. But that wasn't the worst part. After I sat back down and drank after, I'd grimaced at the taste. I could barely detect Benjamin waited until I looked away. Then, he hunched his shoulders and let his head wobble, mimicking my tremor. His face twisted in a cruel parody of my confusion, and Francesca laughed. Silent on the footage, but unmistakable. My son, poisoning me, mocking me, marking me. My knees buckled. I hit the floor of that storage room, Hannah's hands catching my shoulders. "I'm so sorry," she kept saying. "I'm so sorry. I don't know how I made it outside." Hannah steadied me across the parking lot, my phone clutched in a hand that wouldn't stop shaking. The night air should have smelled like jasmine. Gardens were famous for it, but I smelled nothing. Just absence where my senses used to be. "You can't drive like this," Hannah said. "I'm fine." "You're not." Her young face was fierce under the parking lot lights. "What are you going to do?" One thought burned through the shock. I had 5 days. The board meeting was Friday. If I did nothing by next week, Benjamin would control everything. By next month I'd be warehoused in some coastal condo while my son destroyed 40 years of work. "This ends Friday," I said. The words surprised me with their certainty. Whatever illness I thought I had, it was a lie. Benjamin had been poisoning me for months, making me weak enough to sign away my life's work. But I had 5 days to figure out what he'd used, why he'd done it, and how to stop him. Hannah Brooks squeezed my arm. "Tell me how I can help." I didn't have an answer yet, but standing in that parking lot, betrayal fresh as an open wound, I knew one thing with absolute clarity. This ended Friday. The carriage house lab smelled like my oak, rubbing alcohol, and 40 years of careful work distilled into chemical traces. It was past midnight when I unlocked the door, but sleep wasn't an option. The fluorescent lights buzzed to life, illuminating equipment my grandfather had brought from France, beakers and copper distillation coils polished by 3 generations of use, and I needed them to tell me exactly how Benjamin was killing me. I cut the wine-stained fabric from my jacket sleeve and placed it in a test tube, added solvent, sealed it, gave it a shake. While it processed, I pulled down toxicology textbooks I hadn't opened since graduate school. Everything left traces, even betrayal. The chromatography equipment took 90 minutes to run the sample. I spent that time pacing, my mind cycling. What compound could destroy taste and smell without killing outright? When the printout finally emerged, I had my answer. 2 peaks, sharp and unmistakable, zinc chelator, a compound that flushes zinc from the system, and a sulfite receptor blocker. Together, they were brilliant. Evil, but brilliant. Zinc deficiency destroyed taste and smell, mimicking natural aging. The blocker targeted the very receptors I'd built my life around. I wasn't losing my palate because of age. Benjamin was systematically dismantling it. The most important discovery. Both compounds were temporary. Supplement with zinc, stop the exposure, and my senses would return. Benjamin hadn't wanted me dead. He wanted me broken enough to sign everything away. I went to the main house. Benjamin and Francesca had driven back to their city apartment. The house was mine. I started with the kitchen. The vitamins Benjamin had given me sat in the cabinet. Nature's strength, zinc, support, the label said. I peeled it away. Underneath, in stark black and red, Vint Global Industrial Solutions. Sample batch alpha 7 not vitamins. Poison. In Benjamin's old bedroom, I found empty vials in the trash. Property of Vint Global. Someone was supplying him. Someone with access to industrial chemicals and no conscience. His desk drawer held the final piece. Gambling debts. Casino markers from Vegas and Reno. Credit card statements with cash advances circled in desperate red ink. $3.2 million. Payment due in 90 days. The same timeline as my symptoms. If I signed next week, Benjamin would control a winery worth $120 million, more than enough to clear his debt. More than enough to justify destroying his father. I sat at my father's old desk. Behind me, my late wife Catherine's photograph smiled from the shelf. I couldn't face this alone. Benjamin had a partner at Vinti Global. I needed someone I trusted. Absolutely. I reached for my phone and called Martin Cross. He answered on the second ring. Theodore, it's 3 o'clock in the morning. I need you at the estate, I said. No, and Martin, don't tell anyone. I'll be there in 20 minutes. I hung up and looked at the vials. By Friday, I'd know who they were, and they'd learn what happened when you came after A. Beaumont. Saturday morning, I made the call. My voice shook, not from weakness, but from the effort of sounding weak. Benjamin, I can't wait until next week. Come today. Bring the papers. Silence. Then, Dad, are you sure? You sound. I woke up and couldn't smell my coffee. I let the words crack. It's all gone. Son, I want this over. He arrived at exactly 2 p.m. with Francesca in a bakery box. The power of attorney documents were pristine in a leather folder. I met them in my bathrobe, letting my hand shake on the doorframe. Ben's eyes gleamed. Dad, you look terrible. I feel terrible. I shuffled toward the living room. What's that smell? Something's burning. Francesca set a cake on the coffee table. Chocolate, Theodore, your favorite. I leaned over it and jerked back. That's not chocolate. It smells like burnt rubber, like chemicals. Are you trying to poison me? Benjamin's hand found my shoulder. Dad, your nose is confused. Let's get these signed so you can rest. He spread the documents across the table. General power of attorney. My name waiting for a signature. For the pen, fumbled for reading glasses, and knocked them to the floor. When I straightened, my elbow caught the water carafe. Crystal met mahogany. Water flooded the documents. Ink, bleeding, seal dissolving. No. Benjamin lunged, but too late. The power of attorney was ruined. I'm sorry, I made my voice crack. My hands don't work anymore. He stood holding dripping paper, his face cycling through rage and forced patience. It's fine, he said through clenched teeth. We'll print new ones, Monday. No, at the office. Friday. I looked up, confusion clouding my eyes. The board meeting, everyone there. If I'm signing away 40 years, I want witnesses, so Everyone knows it was my choice. Benjamin glanced at Francesca. She nodded slightly. Witnesses would make it harder to contest later. Okay, Dad, Friday at the board meeting. They left soon after. I watched their car disappear down the drive, then waited for dark. Martin arrived after 11 o'clock, parking behind the old barn. We met at the oak tree on the property's eastern edge. The same tree where my father had taught me to prune vines 50 years ago. What's this about? Martin's voice was rough with concern. Handed him a vial. My son is poisoning me. This is what he's using. Martin held it to the moonlight, then looked at me. He didn't question. He didn't ask if I was certain. He just, what do you need? The vintage collection. Every bottle. It needs to be moved before Friday. Moved where? Anywhere Benjamin can't find it. I kept my voice level. He's planning to destroy it. I need it gone by Thursday night. Martin was quiet. Then he squeezed my shoulder hard. The wine will be safe, old friend. I swear it. He didn't ask why. 35 years together meant trust without explanation, but I saw understanding in his eyes. He knew what I was asking. Could cost him everything if we failed. Thursday night? I repeated. Martin nodded and disappeared into the darkness. I stood alone under the oak, looking back at the house where my son had tried to steal my life. 4 days until Friday. The endgame had begun. For 4 days, I played the dying patriarch. I shuffled. When they watched, fumbled with wine glasses, and let them see exactly what they wanted to see. But alone in the lab, I was healing. I drank zinc-rich solutions 3 times a day, detoxed with activated charcoal and milk thistle. By Monday, I could taste the bitterness in my coffee. By Tuesday, the oak barrels in the cellar smelled like oak again, not nothing. I kept it hidden. When Benjamin visited, and he visited often now, circling like a vulture waiting for death, I made sure to squint at labels. I could read perfectly and to sniff wine only to declare it odorless. He grew confident, careless. Wednesday afternoon, I sat in the living room, pretending to doze, while Benjamin paced the garden, phone pressed to his ear. He thought the French doors were closed, but I'd left them cracked open an inch. His voice drifted through clearly. Friday night the tankers roll in, he was saying. We'll have crews working through the weekend, flush it all, every barrel, every bottle. By Monday we'll have cash. Silence while he listened. I don't care what it's worth at auction. Benjamin's voice turned sharp. I need liquid assets now. The casino's not going to wait. Just process it all as industrial base. Nobody needs to know we're dumping $30 million worth of vintage wine down a drain. My hands clenched on the armrest. Yeah, the old man's signing Friday morning. After that, the estate's mine. We'll rebrand by the end of the month. Your fresh, clean line will be on shelves by Christmas. He laughed at something on the other end. Trust me, Theodore Beaumont won't know what hit him. By the time he realizes what we're doing, he'll be too senile to stop it. The call ended. Benjamin walked back inside, saw me sleeping in the chair, and smiled. Later that evening, while Benjamin showered upstairs, I went to his room. His briefcase sat on the bed, unlocked, arrogant or stupid, maybe both. Inside, I found the rebrand proposal. The first page showed my logo, the elegant script B, entwined with grapevines that my grandfather had designed in 1952. Across it, a giant red X dot. The next page made my stomach turn. A new logo, garish green and orange. A blocky sans serif. Font screaming Beaumont fresh and clean. Below it, product mock-ups. My hand-blown crystal bottles vessels that once held evening in Paris in golden autumn now filled with neon blue liquid. The labels read, all-purpose bathroom cleaner, toilet bowl power gel, pipe unblocker, maximum strength. The scent of clean by Beaumont. The tagline at the bottom perverted everything my family had built. They weren't just stealing the winery. They were turning 3 generations of craftsmanship into bathroom chemicals. My name, Catherine's memory. My father's legacy reduced to toilet bowl commercials. I thought of Catherine's photo in the lab, her laughing face as she helped me blend the 1998 vintage. This one's special, Theodore, she'd said. People will remember this wine long after we're gone. They'd remember it as drained cleaner instead. I closed the briefcase, hand steady despite the rage burning through me. Benjamin wanted to flush my life's work down literal drains. He wanted to make the Beaumont name synonymous with cheap chemicals and life-filled promises. Thursday night, the trucks would come. Benjamin didn't know that yet, but his precious collection, every bottle he planned to destroy, would vanish. I'd make sure of it. And Friday morning, When he discovered what I'd done, when he stood in those empty cellars surrounded by nothing but his own greed, I'd be there to watch his face. The cellars had always felt like a cathedral, stone walls, stickers, sentries. Air cool and still, perfumed with oak and thyme. Tonight, it felt like a vault we were robbing, except we were stealing from thieves. Martin's refrigerated truck backed up to the cellar entrance at 11 o'clock sharp. Headlights off. 3 vineyard workers climbed out, faces grim. No one spoke. We worked in silence. Glass clinking, bottles sliding carefully from their wooden racks. 40 years of my life lined those stone walls, each vintage a memory trapped in glass. The 1974 that Catherine and I had made during our honeymoon summer. 1982, that one, Gold in Paris. The 1998 masterpiece. And the 1987 Benjamin's birth year. I'd made 20 cases that vintaged and kept every bottle. They were supposed to be opened at milestones. His wedding day, the birth of his first child. The afternoon he'd take over the winery with pride instead of poison. Celebrations that would never happen now. I pulled one bottle from its slot. The label had yellowed slightly over 37 years. The wax seal was cracked. Inside, the wine had been maturing patiently, waiting for a moment worthy of it. Made this when he was born, I said quietly. Martin had come to stand beside me. Saved it for the day he'd earned it. Martin looked at the bottle, then at me. His weathered face was sad but firm. Save it for someone who deserves it. I nodded once and placed it carefully in the padded wooden crate. Someone would drink this wine someday. Someone who understood what it meant to build something slowly, with patience and love. Just not my son. The crew worked through the night with methodical silence. Every bottle was catalogued, wrapped in protective tissue, and loaded into climate-controlled trucks. The 1950s reserves my father made with his own hands. The experimental blends I'd been aging in Hungarian oak. We replaced them all with dequace bottles filled with water-tinted red with food coloring, scented with cheap synthetic wine essence Martin had picked up from a warehouse. From a distance, in the cellar's dim lighting, they looked authentic. Up close, they were completely worthless. Just like Benjamin's promises, by 5 a.m., the final truck pulled away. The cellars looked exactly the same, bottles still gleaming, dust motes still floating in air that smelled of oak. But every single one was now a carefully crafted lie. I locked the heavy cellar door and walked back to the house. I managed 2 hours of restless sleep on my study sofa. When I woke, the sun was rising over the vineyard. I showered and dressed not in the cardigan Benjamin expected, but in my charcoal wool suit, the same one I'd worn to bury Catherine 10 years ago. Today, I'd bury something else. The board meeting started at 9 o'clock. I drank coffee, could actually taste it now, bitter and reland. Looked at myself in the mirror. Clear eyes, steady hands. Benjamin thought he'd already won. He was about to learn what happened when he came after a Beaumont. Friday morning. I stood before the mirror, straightening my tie. 10 years had passed, yet Catherine's voice was as clear as if she was standing beside me. Do what's right, Theodore, not what's easy. I looked at her photograph, half-actim, 20 years ago, laughing freely. That was before the gambling, before Francesca, before the poison. I remembered her final days. Pancreatic cancer had taken her in 6 cruel months. Near the end, she squeezed my hand. Take care of Benjamin. He needs guidance. I had promised her I would. I failed you, I murmured to the photo. I couldn't save him, but I can stop him. Doubt crept in. I could sign the papers, accept the coastal condo, and disappear quietly. He was my son, Catherine's baby. But then I remembered something else she once said. Don't let anyone destroy what you love, Theodore. Not for money, not for peace. Even if that someone was Benjamin. I picked up the 2 crystal decanters. One held clean water for the board members. The other contained the poison sample from my lab mixed with cheap wine, the same mixture Benjamin had been giving me for months. Before leaving, I checked my phone. One last call to Detective James Porter. I'll be there, he said. Just give me the signal. The drive to San Francisco took an hour. Napa Valley glowed in the early light. These were the roads Catherine and I once drove, dreaming of the legacy we'd leave Benjamin. By 8:45 I was in the financial district, riding an elevator to the 15th floor with a basket of decanters in my hands. Vingloba was all glass and steel, cold, lifeless. The conference room door stood open. I stepped inside, and at the head of the table sat a man I'd never expected to see again. A ghost from my past. Lawrence Garrett. He looked exactly as he had 30 years ago, only refined by wealth, arrogant, calculation in his eyes. Success had made him sleeker, but it hadn't changed him. I set my briefcase on the polished table. Lawrence Garrett. My voice was steady. I should have known. His smile was smooth as aged brandy. Theodore. It's been too long, is it? Pulled down my chair slowly. Seems like you've been closer than I thought. Benjamin shifted in his seat. Francesca's hand found his under the table. The board members watched with careful neutrality. Jennifer Crawford, legal counsel. Brian Matthews, the CFO. Stephen Palmer. Well, Lawrence spread his hands. Shall we begin? I understand you're ready to sign. I looked at my son. His collar was damp despite the air conditioning. In a moment, I said, but first, I'd like to observe a tradition. My father taught me that you never finalize a deal without sharing wine. It's how we honored partnerships at Beaumont. Lawrence's smile tightened. Theodore, I don't think just a formality. I lifted the decanters, crystal catching the light. After all, if Vint is acquiring Beaumont's legacy, you should understand what makes our wine special. I poured the first decanter into a glass and slid it to Jennifer Crawford. Tell me what you smell. Blackberry oak, something earthy, ... Maybe truffle, exactly right. I poured for Brian and Stephen. Both gave similar, educated answers. Then I reached for the second decanter. And this, I said, is something rarer. I poured for Lawrence first. The liquid was pale gold. Unremarkable. Lawrence lifted the glass to his nose, and I watched his face for the flicker of recognition that would confirm everything. Nothing. He inhaled deeply, then smiled. Delicate floral notes. Honeysuckle, perhaps. And there's that white pepper. My chest tightened. Benjamin. I poured him a glass. What do you smell? My son's hand trembled as he lifted it. He knew something was wrong, but he couldn't place what. His eyes darted to Francesca, then to Lawrence. Oak, he said finally. Cherry, maybe, the same, fumbling vocabulary he'd always used when pretending to understand wine. I set the decanter down very carefully. Interesting, I said. Because what you're smelling, both of you, is industrial zinc waste mixed with a sulfite receptor blocker. The same compound I've been ingesting for 6 months. The poison designed to destroy my palate. The room went absolutely still. Jennifer Crawford's pen froze mid-stroke. Brian Matthews stopped breathing. Stephen Palmer's eyes went wide. Lawrence recovered first. Theodore, that's absurd. You're clearly unwell. Then why? I interrupted. Did you describe it as honeysuckle? Why did Benjamin smell cherry? I turned to Jennifer. You correctly identified the 2018 reserve. But they identified poison as something pleasant because their noses work fine. Mine doesn't. Not anymore. Benjamin's face had gone white. Dad, why don't you do what? I leaned forward. Don't know that Vint's industrial division manufactures zinc lattice. Don't know that Lawrence has been supplying you with exactly the right compound to destroy a winemaker's senses without killing him. Francesca stood abruptly. This is insane. We're leaving. Sit down. My voice cut like a blade. We're not finished. Lawrence's jaw tightened. His hands, flat on the table, had gone very still. Jennifer Crawford set down her pen with a soft click. Mr. Guerra, I think we need to... What you need, I said, reaching for my briefcase, is to see proof. Benjamin's face was chalk. Lawrence's veneer had cracked, revealing something cold and ancient beneath. I pulled lab reports from my briefcase and spread them across the table. December. Zinc at 90 micrograms per deciliter. Normal. I tapped each page. March 52. May 31. Last week. 18. Clinical deficiency. 6 months of documented poisoning. Jennifer Crawford scanned the numbers, her face draining. I turned to Lawrence. 30 years ago, you wanted mass production and fast profit. Dilute Beaumont. Across cheap bottles. You refuse, Lawrence said, because it would destroy my father's legacy. So I bore you out for $2.5 million and built a $120 million empire. Lawrence stewed. I failed at everything while you succeeded your way. It made me look like a fool for choosing profit over purity. He gripped the table. So when I found Benjamin, drowning in $3.2 million of debt, I sought my chance. Vinti Labs provided the poison slow untraceable. Then I dump your precious vintage collection. Dilute every legendary bottle into $19 grocery store garbage. The room was silent. 10 years ago, I sent you 12 letters. Registered mail. I gestured to Patricia, my assistant, in the doorway. Catherine had died. I had heart disease. I offered you equal partnership in $100 million estate. Patricia stepped forward with receipts. 12 letters delivered between 2014 and 2015. Never answered. Lawrence's face went white. You tried to reconcile. I tried to give you redemption. You were too consumed by revenge to notice. I set my phone down and pressed play. Benjamin's voice filled the room. The old man can't taste anything. Friday. We close. Tankers roll. Flush the whole collection. Turn Dad's legacy into toilet cleaner money. Mum would probably want this. She always said he loved wine more than us. Cruel laughter echoed. My throat tightened. Catherine loved you more than life. Her last words were, "Take care of Benjamin. This would destroy her." Benjamin's face crumpled. Dad, you had 10 years to honor her memory. My voice nearly broke. You chose this. I stood up. You wanted the vintage collection. Martine moved every bottle Thursday night. Your tankers will find colored water. Benjamin whispered. That's impossible. The door opened. Detective Porter stepped in with officers. Benjamin Beaumont. Lawrence Garrett. You're under arrest for conspiracy, attempted murder, and fraud. Handcuffs clicked. Benjamin collapsed, sobbing. Francesca screamed about lawyers. Lawrence just stared at me. I could have been part of something great. Twice. Yes, I said. You could have. They led them away. The room emptied. I stood alone. At the window, watching the city below. I'd won. Saved the winery. Exposed a conspiracy. But victory tasted like ash. I'd buried my son today. Just not literally. 6 months later, spring came to Napa Valley the way it always does, slowly, then all at once. The vines didn't care about betrayal. They just kept growing. And I learned that people could. Dawn broke over Beaumont Estate, painting the vineyard gold. Hannah walked beside me, notebook in hand, eyes bright with questions. How do you know when the grapes are ready? She asked. I touched a cluster, felt the weight. You taste them, not with your mouth, with your heart. She smelled the same smile from that night at the French Laundry when she showed me the truth. Benjamin got 7 years. Francesca divorced him within a month and walked away with nothing. Lawrence got 15 years. Global collapsed within weeks. Shareholders fleeing the scandal. My senses returned slowly. First salt, then sweetness, then finally the complex notes. I'd spent 40 years learning to distinguish. Cedar and blackberry. Leather and earth. Like waking from a bitter dream. Wait here, I told Hannah. I returned with a dusty bottle. Beaumont Reserve 1987. The year my son was born. I'd kept it 37 years for a celebration that never came. I opened it carefully, the way my father taught me. Poured 2 glasses. Hannah lifted hers, tears forming. It's beautiful. Taste it first. She did, and her expression shifted. Wonder, understanding. It's perfect, she whispered. Yes. I met her eyes. And now it's yours. This legacy, all of it. Her hand trembled. Theodore, I don't carry your blood, Hannah. You're my heir. You've saved my life. You understand what matters. Integrity, quality, truth. You care about the craft, not just the profit. I paused. That's what Beaumont means. Not a name. A promise. She wiped her eyes. I won't let you down. I know. I looked across the vineyard. I used to think legacy was about blood. Catherine knew better. She always said family wasn't biology. It was about who showed up, who cared, who stayed when things got hard. I looked up at the brightening sky. I kept my promise, Catherine. I took care of him by stopping him, and I found someone worthy to carry on what we built. Hannah touched my arm. What's your dream now? I watched the vines reaching toward the sun. I thought about poison disguised as vitamins. A son who'd mocked his mother's memory for money. To make wine that tells the truth, I said. No more lies, no more pretending, just honest work that tastes like what it is. She smiled through tears. Then let's do that, together. This time, the story ends with hope. I lifted my glass of the 87 vintage, and tasted something I hadn't tasted in over a year. Not ash, not regret. Hope.legacy isn't blood. It's spirit. It's love for the craft and respect for what came before. Sometimes the family you choose holds together stronger than the family you're born into. Sitting in the quiet of my vineyard, I reflect on my life as one of those bittersweet grandpa stories. Don't be like me. Don't spend 40 years building an empire only to realize that the deadliest poison can be served at your own dinner table. Never mistake shared blood for shared values. My blindness almost allowed my son to turn my work into a bathroom cleaner. Stay vigilant against the sweet whispers of those who only covet your crown. If God had not intervened through the courage of Hannah Brooke, I would have ended my days rotting in a lonely condo, stripped of my dignity. Do not wait until you lose your senses to realize the stench of greed around you. Life will eventually become one of those stories told to the next generation. Make sure yours is a true story of resilience, rather than a tragedy of misplaced trust. What do you think about the fate of my family? Please leave a comment, share this story, and subscribe for more. Asterisk.